Packers fans out here to stay. Cheeseheads green and gold all day. Jordan Love lead us to the bay. Every game we find a way. Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for all, let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for all, you know. Green and gold gonna glow. Lambeau Field, our sacred ground. Feel the vibe, hear the sound. Packers fans so loud and proud. Jordan Love, he's wearing the crown. Lambeau Field, our sacred ground. Feel the vibe, hear the sound. Packers fans so loud and proud. Jordan Love, he's wearing the crown.
Hello, and welcome back to the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. We are Ope. I am Iowa Joe. The baby face over there is Mike Kawano. We are... I've said from the beginning, it's like herding cats when trying to do this trivia trivia game show that I've been doing. So last week with the holiday, we kind of took a break. This week we couldn't get anything scheduled, so I figured we'd bring Mike back on and we talk a little bit of Packers since this is a Packers podcast.
I'm kind of his co-host too, so it'd be good if I contributed something every once in a while.
We got to get back. We were just talking. We got to get back in the flow of things because from today it's like 17 days until the start of training camp. So we gotta get some of that Packer stuff back in it and get back into the flow of things. We are not
Sure,
done.
remember how to do our own show.
Yeah, that too. We are not done with the trivia thing. We do have a couple weeks left. We just got to get things scheduled on it. But till then, we are talking Packers. We have not spoken Packers since the draft.
Really, UDFAs, yeah. It's been a bit. It's been a hot minute.
So there is a bunch of stuff that has happened. We kind of want to go over, give our thoughts to, and go from there. We have talked UDFAs, so we're not going to bring those up. But going all the way back to May, they did sign Tyrod Taylor, or Tyrod, or however he's pronouncing it this week, to be the backup quarterback, releasing Desmond Ridder on top of that. They did release Brandon McManus, claimed cornerback MJ Devonshire Jr. off of waivers from Buffalo, claimed son of Jerry Rice, Brendan Rice, off of waivers from the Raiders, signed Marlon Jones. Initially, they claimed Luke Lachey off of waivers, but some funky stuff happened. He didn't pass his physical, but then a month later, they did end up re-signing him, so he is on the roster at the moment. Mike, does any of that really stand out to you? I do want to say that Tyrod Taylor, I do not think it is a foregone conclusion that he is the certified backup.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, because like he hasn't been that guy.
I think it's going to depend on. And I know JJ Leahy, friend of the show, is not a big fan of him, but you know they seem to like Kyle McCord. They seem to like this Drones kid. If one of those two outshine, you know, Tyrod's what, 36 right now? 30.
Yeah, he's somewhere between our age. Like he was in college when I was in college and older than me and stuff. But
Well, I just turned 40 yesterday, so he's not that.
No, he's not quite that old, but
36.
But yeah,
he's 36.
There you go. But yeah, you know, he's been around the block a couple times at this point, has started, has held the clipboard, has done all those things. You know, like you said, it depends what McCord and Drone show in training camp, and it kind of weirdly depends on what they're looking for. The other side of the coin of it is that Jordan has missed a couple games here and there the past couple seasons. You know, last season, not really through a fault of his own. You know, he took a dirty hit and stuff, but the year before, the injury in the Eagles game was in the quote unquote flow of a game. You know, like, I know it was in a desperation, but it was in a play that happens, you know, often in games and stuff. So and as the league moves closer and closer to an 18 game season, you're going to expect that your backup is going to have to play every now and then. So they're looking for someone who can, you know, bridge the gap, manage spots, whatever cliche you want to insert into that void, go for it. I'm with you. Like at this point, what does Tyrod do from like a veteran savvy point of view that offsets, a more potentially live arm on McCord's shoulder, definitely more live arm and more athleticism in Drones' body as a whole at this point. So, I mean, I I'm always for just going with the younger option if possible, but it really just depends on what the coaching staff is looking for. Don't think this roster is in a spot to roster three quarterbacks, even though that's a quote easy cut, when someone who we'll talk about later in the show is likely to come off a pup list during the season and all that kind of stuff. But I just don't see this as a junction for them to carry three quarterbacks. And I agree with you that this shouldn't be viewed as they don't this is a backup to a backup to the backup plan. This is not plan B, this is plan E or F or something like that. So yeah, I'm
And
not.
what happens when you get to the end of I was going to call it spring training. You can tell I've got a baseball mind going on. The end of training camp, and you get a deal like the Malik Willis deal.
Yep.
Do you pass that up just because you have Terod Taylor on your roster, or do you just say, "Hey, we're going to go ahead and take this guy, and thanks for being the camp arm and all that stuff." Because I agree, he's never really been a stud quarterback. Hey, this is a can't miss guy. He's always been that backup style that has been able to fill in pretty good once in a great while, and he is getting some age on him. What's how much athleticism does he still have to be able to get outside the pocket and because that was really his big part of the game was getting outside the pocket, and not saying he can't do it, but he's probably doesn't have that juice to still be able to do it. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he is the backup. I mean, right now he is, unless a deal happens where, let's say Will Levis comes up in trade talks and they get him for a seventh round pick, like they did Willis, or uh, I'm trying to think of who else. There has been kind of the scuttlebutt that one of either Shador Sanders or Dylan Gabriel could be out in Cleveland just because they don't have the spots. They're still paying Watson a ton of money. I think they just drafted another quarterback this year, didn't they? And
Yes.
and so, not saying I want Shador, but Dylan Gabriel could be a somebody that you could say, okay, that could be an interesting guy to bring in. Um, so I mean, again, if we get to that point and there's that kind of deal to make, do you say no, we can't do it because we got Terod, or do you say, all right, Terod, thanks for the cup of coffee, and maybe we'll reach back if we need to. And to your point, they're not going to necessarily keep three on the roster, but they are going to be looking at, all right, who are we going to keep on the practice squad? Because they always do
Yep.
that. They keep two on roster, one on the practice squad. So uh, we'll see what happens with that. But uh, other guys, I really don't know much about, so you might know a little bit more. Devonshire and Marlon Jones, both cornerbacks. Uh, is it Jones that I think has a year or two in the league, and Devonshire is
Yeah.
a true rookie. Uh, I think Mike's having.
I believe that was the yeah. And I apologize. Not only are we filling in for am I filling in for an episode, but my internet is out, so I'm recording off my phone, and I can't use my phone to look things up like I usually would during our recordings and stuff. But yeah, I
Okay,
believe you have it right.
Devonshire
That
was a seventh round pick by the Raiders in 2024.
there you go.
And Jones, not that Jones, that Jones. There's a lot of Marlon Joneses out there. Uh, Undrafted rookie. So I had it switched around. Devonshire was the one that's been in the league for a couple years. Jones is a true rookie, and Jones has the feel good story because he missed all of 2024 while battling cancer. So this is his road to that feel good story that if he comes in and and succeeds in the league, they'll have like a movie about him in 20 years or something.
Yep. So, I mean, like you said, kind of more just like training camp body types because you spent two draft picks on player. And I know that Jackson is a sixth round pick, but still, those are two picks. And the general trend is that Groot has kept draft picks unless he trades them, at the end of their rookie training camp kind of thing. So, these are probably going to be bodies for the meat grinder that is training camp and preseason, at least the first couple weeks of preseason. But you never know if anyone's going to pop off in practice and show things that they haven't before. And a guy like Devonshire, maybe the light comes on for him in a new situation, new system, all that kind of stuff, all those cliches. But um,
Well, and they
we'll
need the
talk about.
depth.
Yeah, like I said, they need
Haddon's
the
coming
bodies to
back.
get through training camp. Yeah,
Well, Haddon's coming back from injury.
that's true.
Um, they are going to need the special teams guys. I do have the roster pulled up. Let me see what we got here. Uh, Shamar Bartholomew that's there. Like I said, well, Haddon's on the roster, so he must not be, in worry of being on pup or anything like that. Because normally they would.
I think it's too early for them to have declared because it's not training. Like, you know what I
Okay.
mean? Because it's not training camp, so they don't have to have technically declared him on pup yet. Similar as Parsons, who we'll talk about later, where the expectation is he'll be on pup, but um, he doesn't have to be declared because we're not officially practicing yet. So yeah,
Then
it's
you've
we're in
got
that weird limbo state.
then you got Jalen Simpson, and really that's it for depth. Otherwise, you've got Carrington, St. Juice, Nixon, and Cisse, and well,
Yeah,
and Jackson that you just mentioned. But
yeah. And
so
those are
they
your
need the
five
depth.
guys that you're expecting. Those are the five that are locks or near locks to make the roster kind of thing. And then it's a kind of all out battle for that potential sixth cornerback spot. So
And like I said, special teams will make or break them. And then, of course,
yep,
usually training camp is always well, you're not the roster type of guy, but we're going to audition you for our practice squad. So,
yep, exactly.
there is that. Uh, I think it is time to celebrate. I mean, we've been celebrating since it happened in May. Brandon McAnus is no longer on the team. Um, I, I I have a feeling though that if he doesn't get picked up by anybody else, he's going to end up on the practice squad. And I've kind of had that feeling because let me put this: Lucas Haversick is a good feel good story. He is going to always be in Packer lore because he does hold the record for the longest field goal by a Packer. I don't know if I trust him. He's never been the type of kicker that you can say, all right, well, we're going to trust him to make 20 of 22 kicks in a year. He's more like we're going to get maybe 15 out of 20 kicks or 15 out of 22 kicks in a year. He's going to miss a good chunk of them. So while I don't see him being the practice squad guy, I'm wondering if McManus is still sitting there and they bring him to the practice squad in case, because Smack has already had a couple of camps where, it didn't look great, and it's like, okay, well, they're gonna need something.
Well, and then the one that stands out is literally the training camp or the OTA right after they cut McManus. Is it's like they cut him one week and then the next week it's like, oh no, Smack went like he went 40% on the day or something like that. And they did say it was like a weirdly windy day and all that kind of stuff, but it was that like of course that happens the day after you cut the guy, and it spurred a lot of like those dumb why did you draft the kicker? And my reaction to those are it's the same as my thoughts when they picked Smack, and I know he wasn't the guy that either of us preferred, but both of us agreed that it's like, okay, at least they were being proactive about it, because the whole reason you ended up in you know, to be totally honest, in this position is that they weren't as urgent with their kicking situation in 2023, and you get stuck with Anders. And then, because you kind of played musical chairs with the kicker in the position in the draft, and Anders was the only one who fell to you, and you had to take him. And then it's like, oh, well, we're trying to make it work. It didn't work. And then you spend 2024 with the Narvison experiment that you punted on. McManus run its course, and then now you're here. So, I don't like people playing the, like, trying to play both sides of the street on that one, where it's like, oh, they had to do something at the kicker position, but I can't believe they used a draft pick. But it's like, but if they didn't, and all the kickers went before their seventh round picks, you would all be bitching about it like you did in 2023 with, oh, how did you end up with Anders Carlson and stuff? So I kind of, and some of those people are people we like, Jake Shaving. But no, I'm sorry, Jake. I just
Well, I
had
will
to.
say this here. I have nicknamed Jake the Lemon because he has been nothing but sour about this whole draft class, and I rag on him
And
all the time about it.
to his credit, he has not budged on that, and I give him credit for, if he's gonna dig his heels in, I give him credit for not shifting on it from the minute the draft ended. He had a tweet that read something like, "Why are you all celebrating?" or like something like that, and Jake has not budged from that spot since. So,
Well,
it's on the
and
picks.
to kind of stop you right there, I don't want people to think no, it's all good
No,
fun
no,
with
no.
Jake, and I love Jake to
Yes.
death.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. I just think sometimes that's where, and I even have a hard time with it, and I'm sure Mike has a hard time with it too. That's where you have to separate what the team knows and what a person sitting on the couch knows, and not that
Right.
Jake is just a person sitting on the couch. Jake does a lot of the work and all that stuff
Oh,
too.
yeah.
But
Like I said, I respect that he has the gumption of his convictions to, like, really lean on his scouting of the prospects the Packers took. And his whole thing is, he's like, okay, they took the positions we wanted them to, but I'm not sure why they took these guys, kind of thing. And
yeah,
I think Burton might be the only pick he really liked out of them and stuff. But and it
he's been
like
indifferent about the McClellan one. He's not mad that it was McClellan. He just wasn't sure about it at with other people on the
yeah.
board.
Yeah. And so, and like I said, it's at this point, and you and I are more from the other end of the spectrum, where it's like we're a little more, I don't know if you want to call it naive or green and gold rose or
Optimistic when
whatever.
it comes to
Yeah,
the draft.
yeah. Because, like, we've both said at different points, like, we're different levels of, well, once they're drafted, we're gonna get behind the kid and all that kind of stuff. So, and
Well,
Jake has
my
said it,
thing is,
and
and this is why I was saying the thing with Jake is sometimes you got to separate what we know and what teams know,
yeah,
because
and Jake has said
that's.
he. Oh, go.
Well, I was just going to say that's the reason why they get paid millions of dollars to do what they do, and we don't get
Yeah,
paid anything to do what we do.
yeah.
And I agree that the Packers have had their swings and misses, but every team has swings and misses, and I'm sure there are things that you can point to that Jake's got correct that the Packers didn't get correct. I'm sure there's things that we can point to that you got correct that the Packers didn't get correct. And there's things that you can point to that I didn't get correct, but it's just one of those things that sometimes you just got to trust the process to see what
Yeah.
they're thinking because they're the ones making the money to do it, whereas we're struggling over here trying to make a name for us to do that eventually, because I'm sure if one of these days if Jake gets a call from a team saying, "Hey, you want to come join our scouting department?" then he's going to jump at it. He's not going to say no, 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 I because you guys don't agree with my philosophies and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
And like I said, we're just having fun with Jake. Like, Jake has said it on a couple different, like, of his YouTube vids or shorts and articles. Is like, he hopes they prove him wrong. Like, he hopes the picks prove him wrong. It's just that in his scouting reports and feel for it, it's like, he's like you said, even the McClellan pick. It's like the player, I don't really like the process and stuff, but it's on the kids to prove the team right. That's the main thing we're getting at this point. But you know like and dialing all the way back to the kicker situation, which is where this whole conversation started. Smack isn't the guy that either, we were both stumping for our two kickers and stuff, but you know what? Smack is the Packers kicker at bar none at this point, and I hope it works out because I just want it to not have to be, and that's the thing is like, people are like, I don't want to have to worry. You're always going to have to consider it with, kicking in the NFL. It's hard. Like, everyone's like, oh, like, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to put the oblong ball between the uprights. Like
And
there's,
they make it harder now because they've moved things back a little bit more.
yeah,
The field goal isn't a chip shot anymore. It's a further back, or I mean, a point after isn't a chip shot. It's a further back process. And then, it's not like the olden days where you took a few steps back straight forward and you kicked it with your toe. No, they do their whole soccer style kicks and stuff like that. So you've got to hit it with the right knuckle. You've got to hit it with the right this, right, that, and it's more scientific than it was just put the ball through the field goal.
yep, yep. So, main case in point, thank you. McManus is gone. Like, farewell, McAnus. We don't miss you. And smack, please smack him through. Like, just put it to bed. Like, that's all we ask.
Oh, I didn't mention that they did release Desmond Ritter to
No, you did.
for
You did.
Tyrod Taylor. Oh, did I? Okay.
Yeah.
And that one kind of surprised me a little bit because I think Ritter had some of the same qualities that Malik Willis had. Maybe not so much as a runner, but he definitely had the arm to it. So I figured he was going to be the guy that they were going to hang on to just to see. But obviously they must like Kyle McCord to the chagrin of JJ Leahy. They must like McCord a lot more. Um, I'm trying to go through our stuff here so we can hit all the points. We'll go with this one, Luke
You're
Lachey. I know I've been asked a couple different times about the Luke Lachey thing. Um, Former Iowa tight end. He went a lot lower in the draft process. What was it last year than a lot of people were thinking? But I said it from the beginning.
son of a
Lachey,
breakfast.
what's that?
I was gonna say a lot of it is because he blew his knee out like at the wrong. It's never a good time to blow your knee out, but it really did. Like he hurt him. He hurt it the year he probably could have left for the draft. Then came back and wasn't quite the same the year he came
Yeah.
back. And
Well, it's
yeah,
not just that. People have asked me about my opinion on Lachey a lot, obviously because I am the Iowa homer and all that stuff that I stump for a lot of my guys. I'm not against Luke Lachey. The problem with him is not. I don't want to put him in the same vein as Musgrave, but it's similar to Musgrave where he has all the potential in the world, but for some reason he just can't get it put everything together. And Lachey with Lachey in college, there were drops. There were at bad times there were drops. Um, he injuries was another thing. Like you said, he had the one, but he always had some kind of ticky tacky injuries going on throughout college. He's not a George Kittle or a Sam Laporta when it comes to blocking, but he can hold his own when it comes to blocking. So he is at least a little bit of an upgrade over a Musgraves when it comes to that. I'd like it as a third option. Maybe even could become that number two, depending on Wiley, depending on Musgraves, all that. I'm surprised that, and I kind of put this out there that maybe Musgraves could be moved during the draft, and obviously that didn't happen, so they must not have been able to get much of anything for to work for him. So uh, I do. Everybody knows that I was a big Ben Sims supporter. I really liked him with what he did. I think this is an upgrade over Sims. He's still going to give you the blocking, but he's going to give you that little extra when it comes to actual production. It's all going to depend on how they feel about Wiley. And the reason I say that is because they seem to really like Wiley. and I think Wiley was in Tennessee at the same time LaFleur was. I think they just barely crossed paths on that. Um, I think I'm not sure. I might be wrong.
Mm, no, because I think Wiley is younger than DeGuara, or he might be a year older or a year younger than DeGuara. So he should have
I
been
got
in
the
the
roster
NFL
right
by the
here.
time.
Let me. Okay, Wiley. Yeah, okay. I was thinking for some reason Wiley was 28. He's 26, so maybe they didn't, but still, there's something there that they really liked. Wiley did do some good things last year. I mean, it wasn't a ton of things, but he did do some good things. So I think the battle's going to come down between Lachey and Wiley more than it is Musgraves, because I think with this being a contract year, unless they work a trade out for him during training camp, this is going to be Musgrave's last chance to prove anything before they just cut ties with him. Or it could be something that he is the one of the final cuts on at the end of training camp. You know that's just how he's been playing. So, and they could roll with a Kraft, Wiley, Lachey type situation, and then keep one of like Messiah Swinson or McCastles or that RJ Maryland. I don't know much about him play wise, but that could be the practice squad type thing, or maybe Maryland blows up and he takes the number 2 spot. So, what do you think?
I think Maryland is actually so. I think Lachey is just, is he going to be tight end three? Can he push Musgrave for tight end two? Because you're right. They do like Wiley, but I think they like Wiley as the H-back type, which is weird because he's 6'7", but he really does play more of the H-back role. Because that's the thing, is when he came out, he like took DeGuara's role at Cincinnati kind of thing. And so, that's where they kind of view him functioning. And so that's where like Maryland kind of functions too, is so it's kind of more Maryland against Wiley. And then with Lachey, I do think there's room for a third tight end because I mean they carried Fitzpatrick on the roster until he, dusted his knee and stuff. So I think there is an opportunity for Lachey. It's really just going to come down to the health of his knee at this point because it does sound like he was dealing with the after effects of it. From my point of view, I really just hope he's not like a Jake Butt where, he blows his knee out late in his college career and it's just never gets the opportunity in the NFL. And Jake had like, when he blew his ACL out the second, that was the second time he did it in college. Can't remember if it was the same knee, but then his knees were just shot after that point and stuff. And
Wasn't it more than just the ACL that he
it
damaged
was,
that
but
second time?
yeah, it was. It was kind of like a Bakhtiari situation where there was underlying issues too, but it didn't help that it was his second ACL in college and stuff, and
Yeah.
you just never know. But I agree with you. Like, there's always a bit of like um expectations versus reality with Lachey, but there is that you know he did remind me of like Noah Fant more than like a Kittle or a Laporta at Iowa, where like you said, he would give effort as a blocker, and you could see like some upside there, but it really was more like, where is 85 going to catch the ball for this Iowa offense kind of thing. So, 'cause, I mean, that was the thing, is he was supposed to take over for Laporta when Laporta got drafted and all that kind of stuff. And so we'll see. Like, I'm rooting for him because, like you said, of the young tight ends that are on the roster, Maryland is like the only one that really excites me because I liked his highlights before he blew his knee out. I think him and Lachey blew their knee out like around the same time, within a month of each other. So and Maryland played, both Lachey and Maryland played with the big knee brace and all that kind of stuff. So just hope that each guy gets their shake, and hopefully they can prove an upgrade over what's on the roster. So we'll see. But you know, uh, Lachey was exciting at times in college, and if he can get back to that kind of player, the Packers can use that kind of option at tight end, especially because, like you said, Musgrave. I did think that once they started to use Musgrave, like Musgrave should have been used last year. He had some highlight plays against the Bears and the Broncos and stuff like that. And that's the thing, is it's like he's not going to be the down in, down out threat that like a Kraft is going to be, but like it's that get that 20, 25 yard pass play where he just catches someone sleepwalking or kind of like messes up a coverage, and it's like, oh look, he's open on a corner route for 25 yards kind of thing. And so that's the player that Musgrave is, and it's a little more of a niche role than they were hoping it would be when they took him in 2023 in the second round. But that just means it's an opportunity if Lachey is healthy and can grasp the offense and all that kind of stuff. Like I think it's a worthwhile swing, and just because they do need more answers, and then especially because you know the returns seem good, or the trend seems good for Kraft to be ready week one. I know he's saying all the things you want to hear, where he's like, I'm aiming to play 90% of the snaps week one and be off the count, the snap count by week 3 or 4. But like, until he does it, you just don't know, because, as much as everyone wants to say, and ACL recoveries are better and all, the surgery is better, the recovery is better than it was, 5, 10 years ago. But for every one that works out, you have a Bakhtiari situation where the guy just never can come back. And until you see the guy come back, you just don't know how it's going to go. So, just got to keep putting bodies in who have some upside to see what you got. And Lachey is a lottery card, and one that, if it hits, that's a boon for the Packers. So, I'm all for it. And I'm rooting
And
for him.
relatively, there's not a ton of tight ends on roster. There's only 7.
No. Yeah.
And, Tucker is a lock, that's for
Yep.
sure. And really, that's about the only lock. I
Yeah.
mean,
Like, I
theoretically, you would
think,
think Musgraves is, but, again, with his being a contract year, they have cut guys in the 4th year of their rookie contract before, and if they don't think he's producing, or if he suffers another ticky-tacky injury, there's a possibility he could be gone. Or they tried doing one of those like they did with Josh Jackson, where it was a player for player. This guy's not doing us any good over here, so maybe change of scenery type thing.
yeah.
And then you've got uh, Lachey, who we've been talking about, Maryland, who we've been talking about, Wiley, who we've been talking about, and then you just got Drake Dabney and Messiah Swinson. Swinson, I think, more has what they look for in size than actual production, and then Dabney looks like he. I can't remember, was it him or McCastles that were like the strictly the blocking type tight ends when they signed him
I
to the
think
practice squad.
I know that's definitely Swinson, and then I think
Well, no,
Dabney is
remember
the
when they
one where,
signed Dabney and
yeah,
McCastles,
I
and
think
one of them
Dabney is
was
the
more of
one
a
that,
stretch.
yeah, I think Dabney was the one where he blocked more in college, but he had some flash plays kind of thing. And yeah, yeah,
So
who
yeah,
knows? We'll
there.
see when they play in preseason.
Yeah, as of right now, the only lock for sure, 100%, is Tucker Kraft, unless
Yep.
they trade him off for like a George Kittle or a Kyle Pitts or something like that. They're not moving from him for nothing.
Nope.
Um, let's see what else we got. Mention that. Mention that. Brendan Rice. We can talk about him for a couple minutes here. Obviously, he's the son of Hall of Famer Jerry Rice, who did fumble. And I wonder if this is like payback for that, where they sit there and can say, "This is how I would do it." Is when it comes down to the final cuts, he gets in the room. We appreciate what you did. We appreciate this. We did this, this, this. Your dad did fumble. Now get the hell out of my office.
Yeah, I just think you know, everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, he's Jerry Rice's son. He's not Jerry Rice." Like, it's unfortunate. He has a good frame, decent athleticism, but like
No
when you watch him
speed.
run routes, there's not much explosiveness. Like, for all the complaining people did about Romeo Dobbs and stuff like that, it's like Rice is like a worse version of Dobbs. Like,
Well,
that sounds harsh, but like if you complain that Dobbs couldn't get separation, Rice is like less explosive at the break point. So yeah,
let me
like
throw
that's
this out to you. Well, no. now that I'm looking at him stat wise, I don't think it's possible. But let me just throw this out to you because I kind of mentioned this to I don't know what they're calling it, the Packers net or it was derailed with JJ and Jake. Do you think it's a possibility? And it looks like he's got it on his frame that he could kind of do it. That maybe you could bulk him up a little bit and he could be your stretch the field type tight end because he looks more like it than an actual wide receiver. Unless they're strictly thinking he's going to be their red zone short yard type wide receiver. Because yeah, when you watch that video of him doing his cuts and all that, I I I would rather have the corpse of Don Hudson.
Like, and that's the thing is like we were just talking about the tight ends on roster, and I'd rather see Maryland and Lachey get a crack at it than Brendan Rice. Like, yeah, I just don't see the opportunity for him here. Like okay, like Cornelius Johnson, who we had in camp, he was a more explosive route runner than Rice is and stuff. And it's just circumstances. And that's the thing is, it's like I said, he doesn't have a realist. There's no realistic pathway for him to even make the practice squad as a receiver because like you've got so on roster you've got Watson and Reed, who are deadlocks because of their contract extensions. Golden with his, his second year of his rookie deal. What's it called?
Savion.
Savion. And then there's all the talk about Isaiah Nayor. They still got Bo Melton, all that kind of stuff. So that's
Sturdivant.
yeah, there's six bodies that are well in ahead. And Sturdivant, who, has if you watch his freshman tape again when he was at Cal against Notre Dame, you're like, oh my God, like we got that guy. But then you're like, oh, he like didn't do anything to improve from that guy as a freshman. But that guy as a freshman is a better, more explosive player than Brendan Rice is now. So like that's what they're at wide receiver. And then like I said, at tight end, it's like, okay, sure, like you bulk him up, but like you already have guys in Maryland and Lachey who are already 240 plus and Wiley too in that sense where it's like just let those guys be, and they're all taller than Rice too, I think. And Maryland might be
He's
close,
six
but
two.
yeah. So, but Lachey and Wiley are definitely taller than him, and Maryland is already like you don't have to worry about him bulking up to 242 kind of thing and stuff, and how how he moves at 242. You don't know how Rice is going to move at 242. So, yeah, it's going to catch waves for the name, but that's really it for him, honestly.
Well, and like I said, unless they view him as maybe not like in the sense of Romeo Dobbs, but the short yardage, red zone type guy, because when you go and look at him in college, that seemed to be what he more excelled at was high pointing and at least making his way to get open in those short yardage red zone type deals. So maybe that's what they view him at, but I do think he's got a and you think if he had something special, he would have been he's
The Chargers
he
wouldn't have cut him. Yeah, the Chargers and the
well
Raiders wouldn't have cut him. Yeah.
well he wasn't it's not even just that. He was on New England's practice squad, Seattle's practice squad, and then Raiders practice squad. So if there was something there, then you would think, especially with Seattle and New England there, who were the Super Bowl matchup, you'd think they would have been able to see something in him if there was something there for him. And then yeah, the Chargers, if it wasn't for the they what him a little bit better than I do. They didn't have much out of the wide receiver room when they drafted him, Ladd, and that was pretty well the extent of it.
Yep.
And so yeah, but I have to give him a little bit of break because this says that he was in 3 games and then he got hurt and was on IR the rest of the season that one year. So, who knows? Maybe that could be the thing. He hasn't recovered from that injury. I don't know what it was that he hurt. So that could be something too. And maybe the Packers are hoping that he's fully healthy and on board. But I think I think it is a uphill battle for him because yeah, they did sign Sturdivant, who knows what he's going to be able to do. You've been pretty adamant about he was good in his freshman year, but really nothing else from there. People are obviously high on Nair. Um, I'm high on Will Shepard. I think there's a chance that he could slip in there and be, contribute on special teams and be that bottom of the depth chart type guy because I liked what I saw out of him his last year at Colorado, and then last year during uh, I was gonna call it friggin' spring training and training camp. Uh, he really shined and did well in the games that he was part of. So, I think there's still a chance with him, and he's still only 24 going on 25. So there's a shot for him too. And, you know, that I don't want to say that that room is wide open because we know who the main people are in it, but
That
there
top
are,
three is not getting, yeah, there are opportunities, but that top three is set.
yeah. So that's all for Brendan Rice. We'll go ahead and move on to the extensions. One signed a while back that we didn't get to talk about, and that's the Christian Watson one. 4-year extension. Um, I'm trying to get the number here. I have the breakdown from 4 years, 110.5 million extension, 31 million signing bonus. Uh, Sport Track has it broke down as his cap hit for this year is only 10.5 million. Um, I was reading what some of the people were talking about when uh, he signed it that really there's an out for him after or for the Packers after 2027. So really it's only like a 2-year extension that with a couple of years options on that.
Yep.
So because right now it looks like that his dead cap nosedives after 2028. So yeah, there's a good chance that if he doesn't if he doesn't make it through a season or something happens and then they have an easy out for him. And it's not that big of an extension relative
Nope.
to what other people get. I think this what made him the 15th highest wide receiver when they signed him.
It was somewhere between 15th to 20th or
Yeah.
something like that. It got the rest of the division laughing because they're like, oh, he's technically ahead of Jameson Williams and like, but I'm like, but he's earning half the guaranteed money. It like you said, it's a typical Packers extension because Andrew Brandt says it all the time. It's a 2-year with a we'll see. Like you said, you laid it out perfectly. It's a 2-year. We'll see after that. Honestly, it's a good gamble for the Packers because what you saw after this season was he came back from the ACL, wasn't really on. I know he was on the injury report, but it was because they were going to limit him in practice with the knee. Like they weren't going to go balls to the wall with him coming back from that. But there were no listed soft tissue injuries from my recollection. He stayed healthy the rest of the season. And to me, that's the big part for him. And um, you know, like, is there a scenario where it plays out like the Clay Matthews situation where, it's been one too many hamstring issues and his explosiveness is sapped? Sure. Like, that's what happens when you have these super duper explosive alien athletes is sometimes it just goes away. But that's why the contract is structured the way it is. But also, if you're on Christian, and people are like, why would Christian sign it? It is still, you're still betting on yourself. And if you play it out, you are still 9 figures richer than you were before you signed the contract. So, like, it's a worthy gamble on both sides. There's guardrails for both sides, but it's just a stellar deal by Ball and Gutekunst. And honestly, like for Watson, in his mind, he's like, in 2 years I'll be renegotiating for a new deal too, kind of thing. So it plays on both sides of the street, kind of thing. And like
I
the
kind of
Packers
disagree
aren't
with that
going
point.
to. The Packers aren't necessarily going to, but that's how Watson's agent is telling it to him in his head, kind of thing. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I get that that's a lot of agent talk, but you got also got to remember in 2 years' time he's going to be 29, 30 years old. So
Oh
are
yeah,
they
yeah,
gonna
yeah, yeah.
they
I'm
gonna
not saying
toss?
I would do it. I'm
Yeah,
just saying that's how the player rationalizes like, oh yeah, I'll take that deal because I get the short slash long term
and it makes me want, and I
security.
don't know how agents do this. I don't. I wonder if because they've got to limit what they do because of the whole tampering and stuff like that. But it makes me wonder if agents go out and gauge interest from other teams just to say this is what we're looking at when it comes to your free agent year. Not going to a team and say, "Hey, are you going to sign this guy for this, this, or this?" But
Yeah.
if Christian doesn't sign this, what are your thoughts? Or again, I know they have to be very careful with things like that because of tampering issues and stuff like that. But it makes me wonder if did you lose me?
No, 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 no.
Oh, okay. It makes me wonder if they do something like that because maybe the agent came back and said, "Hey, right now we don't know what the market's not looking too good for you at the end of this season. This is a good deal. You're still getting a bag of money, but it's not, top dollar, but you're still looking at 31 million guaranteed signing bonus. Maybe go ahead and take this and like you said, we'll take our chances in 2 years or whatever, but there's that. And then they did sign Jaden, and we talked about this thoroughly. Signed Jaden Reed to his extension. Maybe that was another conversation that, hey, if you want to stay in Green Bay, you're going to have to watch how much money you're asking for because there's a lot of contracts that are coming up. They're working on the not Watson, the Kraft one. Um,
And Golden is going to play part of your role potentially and all that kind of stuff. That was my thing. And I'll eat some crow on this one because I didn't think a Reed extension was possible. And the whole reason I was open to trading him was like I figured he was going to expect to get 20 million a year from somebody. I didn't think, and Green Bay didn't. What is his average, like 17 or something like that? 17 or 18? What is it in that range or
uh,
whatever?
Here, let me look
It's
it up.
it's not over 20. It's like because it's like 4 years, 70 something, right? Is his deal?
I thought it was similar to what Watson just grabbed. Total cash for 2026 is 21.229 for yeah. 3-year $50 million contract.
That's what it was. Yeah. Yeah. It's not 20 a year. Like
Yeah.
that's totally off by a year. But yeah, like it is the
Average is
like
16.75. So really it is very similar to what the Watson contract is. He's just making what, 5 or 6 less than what Watson is at the moment.
and and it speaks to what I said, where it's like the team views you as like a really good one, but you're a slot receiver and you're not gonna earn as much as a guy like Watson or what they expect Golden to become as a perimeter, a
And you
guy who
haven't
can play on
seen
the perimeter. Yeah.
17 to
So
18 games a year since you were drafted. So,
right. And even then you were kind of dinged up for a bunch of them too and stuff. So like, hey, it's the same thing, gambling on themselves. And you know what? I'm kind of glad because you do need playmakers. I don't think he's a wide receiver one, but he is one of quote unquote those guys that Jordan looks for in a pinch kind of thing. And we talked about it after the playoff game. You gotta make the routine plays that, like that drop he had at the end of the game was one of the killer moments in that comeback attempt because if he catches that ball, they're inside the 15, maybe inside the 10-yard line and he's out of bounds and stuff. So like it's those in and out, the down to down plays that I always say, like he's got to make those ones. But the touchdown he had against the Lions, the play he broke his collarbone on, like those are the ones that you're like yeah, you're paying for those, but it's like need you to make more of the routine ones. But it's a very fair deal for how the Packers see him, and I'm glad he's back. Like I just was always open to the idea of trading because I thought he was going to expect to get paid way more than what he got on this deal, and that was always my position. Was it's like they're not paying him Tucker and Watson 20 million a season each. Like it's just not going to happen at all.
Well,
All this
and
said,
it's not even
yeah,
just that they have to have money for the wide receiver room. Think about all the other contracts that they're going to have to
yeah,
work on. Tucker, Devontae Wyatt, you know, Evan Williams, Javon Bullard are going to be coming up here pretty soon. I was just looking at this. You know, there's a lot of guys that are in year 3, year 4 that they're going to have to look at extending if they're wanting to keep them. You know, Carrington, are they going to keep Carrington? Van Ness has got his 5th-year option next year, but are you going to hang on to him post that? Carl Brooks, Jordan Morgan. As much as it kind of pains me to say with him because we don't know what he's going to bring to the table. Uh, you know, these guys are in their 3rd and 4th years that there's going to be some money that needs to be passed around. Edgerrin Cooper, he's going to need a bag here. You know, he doesn't have the luxury of a 5th-year option. So, you know, next year that's it for his contract. And, you know, so that's
they're
another
gonna want to
thing.
sign him this upcoming not this offseason, but they're gonna want to sign Cooper next offseason to beat whatever his big contract year is gonna be. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
I agree. Yeah. But
but
suffice it to say, the Watson and the Reed deal, like you said, not that it's just looking at one other contract, but those two, especially at what they signed him for, that just makes the whatever the Kraft deal is gonna be, it makes it that much easier for the team to retain Kraft too. And like I've seen some people argue, like, what does this mean? They're keeping Tucker. Like you're not,
yeah,
like you
fair.
said, unless you're getting someone better than him, you're not signing Tucker. Or there's only two reasons you're not signing Tucker. His knee is totally washed, which all signs are not, that's not the case. Or you're somehow getting a better player than him at his position, which I don't see as a feasible possibility at this point. So Tucker's getting extended. It's a matter of when, not if. So yeah.
Right. I was trying to see. Obviously, Kelsey, Kittle, and Pitts are probably the top dogs in money. I was trying to see what they would. Uh, but I don't like Spot Tracks uh, calculator. It doesn't show me what I need to see. But because I was trying to think if Watson got 23, you got to figure Tucker's at least getting, 27, 28
Oh, he's
a
pushing
year.
30. He
Yeah.
yeah. That like the only one that I was kind of like like is I wish they had beaten the Arizona tight end
Oh, McBride.
yeah, I was like, I wish they could, and it's hard because Tucker's coming off the ACL repair and all that kind of stuff. But I was like, I really wish they could have beaten the McBride deal because it's like now you have to beat the McBride. I wish they could have made the agreement before the McBride deal got signed, but now that's like a benchmark that you have to meet or surpass kind of thing. So yeah, like, but like I said, it's a when not if with Tucker. Like to me, that's my opinion on it.
Okay, so Kittle is number one. His total value or his APY is 19.1. So total guarantee is 35. Average guarantee is 8.75. So maybe it's not going to be that close, but it's going to definitely have to be 19 to 20 million per year to keep him in Green Bay.
They'll
So,
make it happen. It'll happen.
well,
This
I'm
is
not
where it
saying
helps
it's
that you're
not
not.
going to happen. I'm
This
just
is where it
saying
helps
that.
that you're not paying a cornerback top money anymore.
Well, I was just saying that it's not. It's that sometimes these guys have to realize if we want to stay on this team and we want to stay competitive, we can't be the top
Yeah,
sign guy in the league. And especially when your quarterback is already one of the top guys in the league, that sometimes you got to take a little bit of less to be on the team to continue to compete. So the last one that I really have here, and it just happened today as of recording, was announced, is Isaiah McDuffie got extended for another year, worth 4.85 million over the additional year, 1.5 million in signing bonus, and a 750K roster bonus due if he's on the roster on the third day of the new year league year, which they always do that. They don't make it right on the first day of the league year. They always make it like the third or fourth day, just because that helps them with the salary cap. That okay, do we have to cut him? Can we restructure him? Can we do this? Can we do that? Just to see what the rest of the league's doing. But I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I like Isaiah McDuffie, but I don't like him as a starter. He's
Yep.
definitely a depth guy. He's definitely a special teams guy. He's a rotational guy. He's that downhill thumper, but he's not going to give you a ton in any kind of coverage. Um,
That
if
was
they're
how
going to
Detroit got
run,
in. That was how Detroit got back in the game in Detroit
yeah,
last season. Is they just threw it right over him. So, yeah, I know where you're going with this. This deal is a prudent one where it's like, okay, you're like the linebacker room is in transition because you lost Quay to free agency. You traded for
Zaire.
oh Zaire Franklin, but it's like, okay, is he going to be around even after this season? Coop is the future at the position, but it's like, okay, like you still don't really know what
Tyron Hopper and
yeah, Karen Hopper is. You didn't really draft at the position this draft, so it's
no,
like
but they got their preferred uh UDFA. Let me grab the name here just a second. TJ Quinn.
yes. So, but he is still a UDFA, so we'll see. But I think it's a prudent move because, like you said, there is ways to get out of it, and you don't save everything, but you save like over 2 million or whatever from moving on from McDuffie. And I don't want to say the roster is necessarily in a better place if he isn't playing for the Packers in 2027, but it gives them the option that if like the draft works out a certain way or free agency or whatever, like, okay, you have options to move on ahead of, the when the calendar turns over and stuff. So we'll see. You know, it, it's pretty much what he's gonna make this year in terms of the money. Maybe it's like a 500,000 higher or something like that. I know he was in the four range this for the pat because his contract was like 2 years, 8 million or something like that. So he's in a similar range. So it's just one of those like. He's a good special teams player. He's a team leader in that regard. I think he was a special teams captain. So, it's like I said, it's a prudent move, but it's one where it's like you 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 have one less totally vacant chair in position room musical chairs, but also if you can improve in that spot, you're going to. So yeah.
And just looking ahead to 2027, the linebacker free agents aren't really the most appealing. A lot of them are pretty, I won't say old, but they're hitting that point where are they still in their prime or are they
Are you getting
moving
Bobby
out of
Wagner on the red or on the commander?
yeah, so I mean you got Patrick Queen who's going to be 28, Jordan Brooks 30, Blake Cashman 31. And this is if they don't get re-signed or anything like that. Uh Zaven Collins is going to be 28, Dre Greenlaw 30. Yeah, so a lot of these guys, Drew Tranquil is 32, Denzel Perringman I didn't know was still in the league. Um, a lot of these guys were names when they were drafted, but it just, uh, yeah, I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But yeah, the McDuffie's not a make or break thing. He's going to be a rotational guy. He's going to be the depth piece. Hopefully, they prove that Tyron can do something. TJ Quinn is a little bit undersized, but maybe that means they're looking to him to be that coverage guy. I'll be honest, I don't know much about him. I didn't pay attention to him. I know they brought him in for a top 30. I know he's out of Louisville. That's pretty much all I know. 6 foot, 225. So he's in that McDuffie range. So maybe it's something that they can work on. Um, but yeah, that's we're caught up on all off-season transactions and that. We'll be moving towards like a training camp primer. We'll do a full breakdown on the roster and potential camp battles and that. Uh, so we're out at about an hour here, so I don't think we want to sit for another hour doing potential camp battles and stuff like that. But signs have pointed that the rookies are looking pretty decent through camp, so that should be fun to see during training camp. Mike, we're gonna get Mike out here for training camp one of these years with the kids and all that stuff. I will be up there about mid August. Um, so I'm looking forward to that. Mike, is there anything else that we didn't cover that we need to cover, or the edges are still working out with Micah Parsons? I guess we didn't really talk about Micah, where you know they're predicting he's going to end up on pup, but the pup rules have changed where it's no longer like a 6 week thing. It's he can come back after like what is it, 4 weeks or something like that.
It's still 4 weeks, but he can start practicing after two or something like that.
Yeah.
There's an earlier ramp up period and stuff. I have to reread the rules, but like I still think you can't come back before 4 games, but you can start practicing before the fourth game, if that makes sense. Before you had to not do anything until the fourth game, but now you can start to ramp up ahead of that.
But I think that was always predicted. I when I had Terrence Parsons on and I was talking with him, you know, Micah's goal was always to be ready by week 1, but realistically, it was going to be more like a
Yeah.
week 3 thing. Go back and listen to that episode. We did talk about Micah's recovery and all that, and you watch the videos. He's moving around pretty, not like full speed or anything like that, but he's still moving around pretty good. Again, he's had a lot of the younger guys out there working out with him. I think they're in California working out. Uh, like Baron Sorrell. I think Colin Oliver's been out there with him. A lot of the younger guys are
He's
out there
still
working.
hyping up Lucas.
Yeah, he's still hyping up Lucas, which is I think not. I don't want everybody's gonna go, well, that's because he's a. I think it's a good thing he's hyping up Lucas because
Yeah.
one, you want that leadership on the team to say, hey, you're doing a great job. You've got the potential. Let's get the best out of you. You don't want. I think, and I kind of mentioned this with, again, going back to the Terrence Parsons interview. That's what this team has lacked for the longest time is vocal leadership.
Really since
And
Woodson left, honestly.
yeah, and well, even not just then, because you still had TJ Lang and Josh Sitton and stuff like that were pretty vocal on things. You could say that with Bakhtiari. Bakhtiari was pretty vocal on things, but you really haven't had that you've had the veteran presences, but you haven't had the vocal leadership. I know Mike Daniels has said this before on a lot of different places, but uh they don't even they there for the longest time they wouldn't even bring in former Packers to do that kind of thing. And even when he was on the team and he would try to do that stuff, he was kind of, hey, we don't do that kind of stuff around here. Well, no, that's the kind of thing we need to bring back is this vocal leadership. I'm not asking for you to go out and get thrown out of a game every other week or anything like that, but you need the guys that can run their mouth a little bit, back it up, and also can rah for your team or call out your team when it needs to be called out.
Yep. I totally agree with you. And, and everyone, there's a lot of people who are like poo-pooing, like, Lucas, like, oh, they picked up his fifth year, all that kind of stuff. But I'm like, if you look at how productive the pass rush was the first like 5-6 weeks before he hurt his foot, he gave them so much versatility up front by being able to reduce inside and play on the field with Micah and Rashawn or whoever. And when he got hurt, and especially when he and Wyatt were both out, they just lost so much juice up front with what the flexibility and versatility of what they could do along the defensive line. So really hoping that he is able to, get to, he can take off from the high points of where he was at last season because he was kind of and it was his foot. Like he wasn't going to just come back and be totally the same and stuff. But really hope he's past that injury because it really looked like he was going to have maybe not like a statistical counting stat season, but just in terms of his overall impact on what the team did as a defensive front, that you could see that like it was going to be a big season for him. So you really hope that he can hit the ground running and no one's rooting for it more than Micah is at this point. But yeah, really excited to see him working with guys like especially like Sorrell and Oliver because Oliver like we've both joked that he's like Parsons light and but like
Well,
just
he was
just
supposed to get the nickname Baby Micah, and according to
yeah.
Terrence, he doesn't like being called Baby Micah.
But it is one of those where it really helps having a guy who's not the same, but has similar like physical build and limitations to you to show you the ropes on how like you can use you can leverage your athleticism and the strengths of your physical build to work into your advantage. And then with Sorrell, like Micah's talked about just his relentless motor and how like he's excited to work with him even more this season and stuff. So it's just all the, it has to translate to on the field, but it's all the kind of stuff you like to read and hear about in the off season. Like you'd rather hear that than opposite, than like Parsons being like, none of these guys care. They invited them all to work out. And, while I rehab to work out with me and they were all like, no, thanks, but no thanks kind of thing. So, rival fans are going to be like, it doesn't matter. It does matter. Like it does. Yes, it has to translate to tangible impact on the field, but like I said, the Lucas stuff clearly was last season, and you just hope that he continues to ascend, and that like Sorrell and or Oliver get that kind of a boost from being around Micah, and he's obviously already taken Dennis Sutton under his wing because of the Penn State connection and stuff. So and they weren't there at the same time, but Micah's like, yeah, of course I'm gonna take him under my wing and stuff. So, it's just like a broken record, whatever you want to call it, but it's all the kind of stuff you want to hear coming out of the off season.
And on top of that, it does when you're working out with your same position group, then you can work on like hand gestures and stuff like that where you're not having to yell at each other. You can say,
Yeah,
okay, well this is going to mean this is going to mean that, and go from there. So yeah,
it's kind of like
yeah.
catchers and pitchers report time stuff. Like it's that sort of thing.
But I don't know, Mike, is there anything else we need to touch on? I think we pretty much covered it all.
That
Like I
we'll
said,
just The only other one that we'll put, we'll earmark for later is the Josh Jacobs situation has to play out.
we can kind of talk it here. I know a lot of people have been bringing it up, and I don't want to.
We don't want to brush it off or put it under too much of a microscope, but it really, the thing is it's truly at the stage of, and the team has handled it as best as it could, where I'd like to say nothing probative has come out because they haven't gone to the extreme that the Lions just did with Terran Arnold, where they cut him. And I'm also glad that the team hasn't put itself in the position to have its foot put in its mouth, where like in April, the Lions were we are unequivocally behind Terran Arnold, and he is our guy, and we stand with him. And then 2-3 months later, it's like we're cutting his ass like immediately, effective immediately. Like good defense. The official statement from the team is the process has to play out. We're investigating. The league is investigating. Police investigation, and we're gonna let the legal process. That's where it's at. Like it's. To our knowledge, with no insider info, it's very much in the realm of he said, she said, and until that process plays itself out, you know, you wanna believe the best in people. Like this is just what I'm gonna say. I want to believe the best in people, and at the same time, there's so many of these professional athlete stories where it's like, oh, like that's who the guy is behind closed door. I'm not saying that's what Josh is. It does seem like so far his account of the situation is what's the fact that nothing has come to light further seems to corroborate or at least align with his statement of the events. But also, it was unsettling when he was the statement came out that he was being booked for arrest. It was like the list of things he was being you know as a person of interest, the reasons that he was a person of interest, that was a lot further than is normally taken in these kind of situations where normally it's like
But
it's a civil it's a civil dispute, it's aggravated assault. It got descriptive in a way that's unsettling. But also, like we said, that's why the process has to play out because, like I said, they went 0 to 120 off the bat, and you've heard nothing about it. And like I said, that does not exonerate him. We have, and we're just playing it straight down the middle because it's like innocent until proven guilty, but also the track record with athletes in this position has not been great overall. So that's just my position on it. I'm in the wait and see. We're in the holding pattern above the airport, but we'll get the wave off or we'll get the clear to land, and we'll see where it goes from here. Like that, I'm just gonna play it as straight down the middle as I can from there.
now I will say this, and I don't want people thinking that I'm being hypocritical about situations because we both ragged on the McManus shit and why we didn't want him in Green Bay, and but he's had a history of being a total d bag.
Yes.
Josh Jacobs didn't, so we are in a wait and see process with him. But I will say this: all the videos I've watched, all not of Jacobs, but all like cop videos and all that stuff that I've seen, he may have been arrested and charged for a lot of that stuff, but cops will throw everything out there that they can think of to charge a person with. Then it's up to the DA to decide what they're actually going to go forward with.
Right.
So while it does sound horrible with the list of things that they were
Right.
charging him with, that doesn't necessarily mean that's everything that that he did all that stuff. Now, with
Right.
that being said, I am of the mind that you have to wait and I'm not discounting what victims say. I'm not discounting what anybody says. You just got you nobody will ever know the truth of anything.
Yep.
That's the sad part of it. The thing that you always learn growing up is you have your side, I have my side, and the truth lies somewhere in the middle. And you have to base your thoughts off of all that stuff. If he did everything that he has been charged with, he needs to be gone.
Yep.
If he
No
did
ifs,
even
ands, or
an
buts.
inkling of what he did, there needs to be consequences.
Yep.
But if he didn't, am I going to look at him a little bit different? Maybe. Because, there's a lot of times when there is smoke, there is fire. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's a horrible person and he does this all the time. This is just the first time he got caught. That doesn't mean that.
Right.
Maybe it was a situation where it was two hot-headed people that were so upset that they started, slapping around on each other, and he's just the one that got turned in on it. It's possible.
Because he's the
It
guy.
happens.
He's the guy kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I do say the same thing that I say with all of them. If it comes out that he did that stuff, then you just got to cut ties with him.
Yep.
And the Packers have put themselves in this position on their own.
Yep.
Nobody knew what was going to happen with Josh. Nobody knew that this was going to come up, but everybody knew that there was a hole in the depth chart behind Josh Jacobs. You can't rely on Marshawn Lloyd. I hope the best for the kid. I hope
Yep.
he comes out. I hope he's looking fairly good in the limited amount of stuff that he's doing in training and camp. But you can't rely on him. Chris Brooks, good good player, but I don't know if he's an every down style back.
He's Tony
Um,
Fisher.
yeah. Um, I just had it up and I should have looked at it because didn't realize.
Sarah's guy. Sarah's dude.
Uh, Yeah, but that doesn't help me with the name of it. Jaden Nixon. Pierre Strong still on the team, but he's 27. The one that I keep hearing about, Jake is pretty high on him, is Damian Martinez. So maybe they see more of him than what we've seen so far, that, he could be a guy that could be relied on. Maybe they're waiting until final cuts to pick up a guy from, because the rumor is that so far, even though he signed the contract with Seattle, Emmanuel Wilson could be the odd man out in Seattle, and he could be brought back. But who knows? We'll get further into that rabbit hole when we start doing our camp battles and stuff. But Mike, I think that's pretty much covers everything that
Yep.
we didn't cover from the draft on. um, be sure to follow us on all our socials. Mike's sweating to death over there. Ohana_Packers on Twitter, Quano Mike on Twitter, IO_Joe86 on Twitter, um, Facebook, Instagram, all those things. It's all Ohana Packers Edition. We are still trying to do the stuff on the giveaways over at Facebook. We are inching closer and closer by the day, but we're still a few away from there. Be sure you like and subscribe. Drop us a rating. Rate and review. Let us know how we're doing wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you. I don't even care if it's all 5 stars. Give us some 3s or 4s in there. Just let us know what we're doing that you like, what you don't like. We have had an influx of listeners over the last few weeks, so welcome. Thank you for being here. If you're here just for the Star Wars stuff or the off-season stuff, we're sorry, because we're going to be moving back into Packers-related material. If you're here just for the Packers stuff, sorry for all the off-season stuff, but couldn't just regurgitate the same thing everybody else is talking about on the podcast. So Mike is going to refresh himself and get back into the flow of things. I'm going to finish out what I'm doing if I can get everybody scheduled properly. And if you have any questions, comments, or anything, do reach out. We're pretty open about all that thing. I know I'm not as much active as Mike is on the socials, but if I do see you reach out, I tend to try to reply on things. But go over to the merch store, ohanapackers.org. Help support us. Like I said, we're trying to get Mike and kids over here for training camp at some point. And obviously it's not expensive to run a podcast, but it's not cheap either. So, any little bit helps us keep going. I think this season we're going to end up hitting the 400 episode mark. So, we have been doing this for a long time now. It would be nice to see us actually start getting some representation. Even if you want us to call out people, I have no problems yelling at people. So, you send me a clip saying, well, this guy's saying this. Me and Mike will yell at him. Maybe me more so, but Mike and I will yell at him. That's fun. But Mike, go ahead and finish her off, since nobody's heard your dulcet tones saying our outro forever.
Go Pack Go and aloha.
Packers fans out here to stay. Cheeseheads green and gold all day. Jordan Love lead us to the bay. Every game we find a way. Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for all, let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for all, green and gold gonna glow. Lambeau Field, our sacred ground. Feel the vibe, hear the sound. Packers fans so loud and proud. Jordan Love, he's wearing the crown. Lambeau Field, our sacred ground. Feel the vibe, hear the sound. Packers fans so loud and proud. Jordan Love, he's wearing the crown.